Well, thank you so much for attending today's webinar. For those of you who don't know me, my name is Nick Swedberg. I'm a partner here at Boyum, and we are very excited and just glad that we get to have Peter Durand on with us. He is an owner of Imagine IT, and I will let him give a little more background on his credentials, which are extensive, but he's got a slide so we can see those in a little bit. This webinar is being recorded and it will be up on our website shortly after we get that recording back from Zoom. And if you do have questions, Peter is willing to take them. If it's related to a slide we're on, please just use the chat feature at the very bottom of your screen. And you can send that to open public chat because I'm sure if you have a question, most likely somebody else does. And I will interject, Peter, if it's related to what we're going over. I might save some if they're coming up later, or we will save a few for the end. With that said, Peter, you want to tell us about this cool map we're looking at?
Sounds good. Yeah, and I'll give myself kind of a full introduction in a minute. So, thank you everybody for taking the time to attend this important session. This presentation is unlike any session you've ever attended. It's action-packed, and there will be content that could be disturbing to some people. I am going to share with you today the harsh realities of cybercrime your sources of news and information are not telling you. Why aren't they telling you? Because cybercrime doesn't generate clicks and ad revenue. It's not rage bait. So it's buried. You don't hear about it. Only people like me, kind of in the security community, hear about it. Now, we've all attended presentations, but be honest, how much do you actually take away that doesn't quickly get forgotten or never acted on? I've tried to solve for that. This presentation has many impactful and actionable takeaways. And to help make sure you act on them, there'll be homework assignments for all attendees so that you come out of this with preventional wisdom. Do your homework. It'll help you protect your country, your business, your clients, and your family. All right, what are we looking at on the screen here? This is a live view of cyber warfare from over 100,000 criminals and defenders around the world. And that number doesn't include the over 200,000 trafficked humans held captive, forced to work in scam centers to steal our money. I'll get to that in a minute. The world is at war, and I'm not talking about the Iran war. The world has been at this war for a long time and will be for a long time to come. It's not a blood in the streets kind of war, because if it were, it would be front page news every day. But you folks rarely hear about some of the stuff I'm going to share today. It's an arms race that we are losing to adversarial nations and organized crime. Like it or not, we are all on the front lines of defense for your country, your business, your clients, and your family. From the context of the United States, you're not going to see enemy tanks rolling down Main Street. This is war for us in 2026 and beyond. All right, let me get that off the screen here. Okay, now look at the title of this presentation. There's going to be a lot of stuff in here that you folks have never seen before. We're going to go through the current threat landscape, and I'm going to teach you folks a lot about what you can do to help protect your businesses and families and so on. A little bit about myself. I started an IT services company about 30 years ago. I'm highly technical, got a lot of employees. We're pretty good size. I have business partners that run the other side of the business. I run security and privacy. It takes a lot of focus. It's so critical in this day and age. It takes a lot of stuff. I follow the best and brightest thought leadership for AI, cybersecurity, cyber insurance, the related legal side of that, incident response. And I provide business cyber risk coaching on all those topics to small businesses. And I also perform a lot of webinars like this. I probably do about 2 or 3 a week. Okay, now this webinar is kind of a combination of 2 webinars I put together. One webinar really focuses on talking to leadership to educate you on what you need to do. I do another webinar, probably much more frequently, where I educate end users of a company, and I go really deep into helping them make better decisions so they don't make mistakes that cause the company problems or their family problems. But I have included some of that content in here, so it's kind of a combination webinar. We're going to cover some things today. Your organization is at risk. Hopefully you all know that. Everybody's a target now. We don't want to be low-hanging fruit. The low-hanging fruit is mostly what you hear about in the news or don't hear about in the news. Executives, you folks, own cybersecurity outcomes. That's not an IT thing. You own it. And you can't assume someone else has it covered. We're going to talk about that a lot today. This is really the core theme of it. How do you engage with IT like you do with finance? All right, we're going to talk about AI use policy a little bit, and then how a good security posture can actually improve your business valuation, and there'll be homework at the end. All right, as Nick said, use the webinar chat feature. We will provide, I know the recording will be out there in a day or two. We're also going to provide a PDF of the PowerPoint. All right, current threat landscape. We all saw that. All right, let's talk about the dark web. Let's start there. So look at this iceberg here and think about that as the entirety of all the internet. The top 4% is accessible via a Google search. Now think about how massive their reach is. They can only get to 4% of the internet. Why? Because most of it's behind a legitimate place, behind a password and a firewall. It's where our data is. Now look at the dark web, 6%. It's larger than the Google accessible internet. It is absolutely massive. And what goes on there? Bad guys do bad things. They sell contraband there, weapons, drugs, pedophiles hang out there. But from the context of this presentation, the bad guys have, I guess, have their own supply chain. All right, so different bad guy groups have different roles, just like in legitimate business. Some of them, they're called access brokers. All they do is establish access on your network, and they sell that access to somebody else, maybe a ransomware group, who then wants to come in and do their thing. Some of the advanced groups make these turnkey kits. All right. So, you know that little cyber missile map we were looking at a minute ago? Up until just a few years ago, there was only a small handful of advanced hackers, but they have sold their tradecraft or they rent it to lower level groups, and now there's over 100,000 of them. These turnkey kits, they have these turnkey ransomware kits. You just rent this thing and it does all of the work for you. Low skilled attacker can use it. Same with the phishing. All this phishing email we're getting, most of it's now coming with a phishing kit, which makes it much more sophisticated and easier for them to do. Once they get a company's sensitive data, they probably try to post that for sale on the dark web, or maybe they ask for a ransom. What's interesting for me is, again, that selling hacker tradecraft, that they've commoditized it now and made it so much easier. And some of these groups have set up franchises. So top level ransomware group rents their ransomware kit or teaches some lower level group how to do ransomware. When the lower level group gets a ransom payment, they have to pay commission to the top level group. Very interesting. Okay, only a couple slides of bullet points here. 2021 is really kind of when that started happening, when they started commoditizing it and teaching all the lower level groups, and they attack everybody. Civilians, nonprofits, schools, churches, it doesn't matter. If you have a bank account or sensitive data, you are a target. Very importantly, the typical time frame from initial access, from that moment a user makes a mistake and clicks a link or takes a phone call from someone pretending to be IT support, is only 18 minutes till successful lateral movement. They're spreading on the network. How are they so fast? Because they have the blueprint for everything now. They have a blueprint for Microsoft and Apple and Linux and Android and iOS and all that. And once they figure out where they are, let's see, somebody clicked a link. Now I'm on a Windows computer. I'm going to bring up my Windows playbook, and I'm going to run this command and run this script, and they use AI, and bam, 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 it's very fast. And they move a lot faster now because they know the defenders like us are watching more closely. There are over 800 businesses in the US that get victimized every quarter. You folks might hear about a couple, maybe City of St. Paul, right? You're just not hearing about it. 3/4 of the victims are small businesses our size. We're not going to make the news. In about half of all ransomware incidents where the victim paid the ransom, forget about paying the ransom, where there was an incident, the bad guys were able to destroy the backups, forcing in ransom payment. And for those that paid the ransom, only 10% were able to get all of their data recovered. Now, there's some technical challenges. Maybe the bad guy had good intentions. Maybe he didn't. Don't know. There's a couple of places here I'm going to strongly discourage paying ransoms under any circumstance unless it's to get your business back up and running. Billions of dollars each year are getting sucked out of the US. It's all going out and used for really bad things. Think about the trade deficit. Money goes out and we get a product in return at least, but in the cybercrime deficit, we get nothing. It's just all going out to the tune of hundreds of billions of dollars a year. Multi-factor authentication, that new gold standard of protection, is not enough to protect you. I'll probably talk about a couple ways today the bad guys get around it. In my user-facing webinar, I talk about 4 different ways bad guys get around multi-factor authentication. Our government entities can't protect us. They're having a hard time protecting themselves. I hear about them in the news more than anybody. Part of the problem is they have very old, expensive legacy software systems that'll cost billions to upgrade to make secure. Nobody wants to pay more taxes. So they have a very difficult challenge ahead of them. Little update for this year. Artificial intelligence is making it easier for the bad guys to make stronger viruses and improve their tradecraft. Generative AI like ChatGPT and Gemini and Copilot are making it easy for the bad guys to make perfect phishing emails with no spelling or grammar errors, even if they don't speak English. Now, I spend a lot of my time studying AI. And one of the things I try to talk to our clients about is how are you going to get return on investment ROI using AI? Well, the bad guys have figured it out. The bad guys that are using it are getting significantly more return on their investment. They're more profitable by using AI. Pretty much all of them are doing that now. Bot traffic is over half of all internet traffic. Bot traffic meaning they create all these fake accounts that then send out traffic. It's clogging the internet. Oftentimes they take over devices around the internet and they're just clogging everything, and they use that to attack people. Last year, ransomware attacks were on the increase. Well, that's probably no surprise. What's interesting is payments are down because companies are doing a better job of protecting their backups so they can't be deleted. Um, and maybe they're just choosing not to pay a ransom. Again, I'm going to discourage that. However, breach and class action litigation is way up. All right. So if you have an incident, this is probably where the cyber insurance is going to have a big impact on helping you recover from this. The average ransomware claim last year for a cyber insurance claim was over $400,000 for orgs of our size. That's a lot of downtime, recovery expense, reputation repair, maybe a ransom payment. It's a lot. Take note of this one. In 2024, National Public Data was compromised. They were a background checking service. What kind of information did they have about all of us? We're talking billions of records were stolen. They had current name, previous names, mother's maiden name, social security number, maybe security questions, current address, former addresses, criminal record, known associates. It's all out there. The bad guys have everything they need to try to steal our identity or social engineer those around us. Now, one thing you might want to do later, I think it's in the homework assignment at the end, is you want to go to National Public Data, Google it, opt out, go there, find yourself, print it out. It's kind of interesting. And then opt out. They'll delete what they have left. They scrub some of it, but they'll delete what's gone. Interpol says in 2025 alone, global losses to financial fraud was over $400 billion. That doesn't even include ransomware. Now, 2/3 of all incidents are credential takeover. That's very relevant to what we're going to talk about today, meaning somebody's account gets taken over, your email account, which is serious, bank account, payroll account, Amazon account, whatever it is. These are serious things. They make way more money doing that than they do with ransomware. We're going to talk about that a bit later. I'm only going to touch on the first bullet point of this slide. Cybercrime is now considered to be the world's third largest economy. Unfortunately, electronic currency is what's really fueling this. It's estimated to be about $10 trillion a year. Who pays for this? We all do, either directly as victims or through higher prices. Think about kind of the old days, like Walmart, Target. They go through theft. They build in the cost of all the theft into the price of everything. Everything we buy right now, online or in stores, they're building in the price of cybercrime. We're all paying for it. Okay, here's some of the disturbing content. So primarily in Southeast Asia, in corrupt governments that are friendly to criminals, cyber criminals, they have what we call these huge office compounds we call scam centers. The scam centers generally have workers in there that are working there against their will. Say you live in Africa and you find some cool job online and you go online and go through an application process, you get interviewed, it looks great, they hire you, you fly to this country, maybe you bring your family with you, and the second you walk into this huge office compound, you're held captive. They take away your passport, ID, money, cell phone. You're forced to commit cybercrime and hit a quota. If you do not hit your quota, you're subject to physical violence. Your family could be subject to physical violence, maybe prostitution. Why do I tell you this? Because if you're a victim of a cybercrime, yes, it sucks. You just lost money. Maybe you're going through some identity theft issues, which is actually pretty serious, but you're facilitating this disgusting industry. You're facilitating downstream harm of other humans. If we would all stop becoming victims, this industry would go away. All right. So we all have an obligation to not become victims, which means we all have to get educated to not make a lot of these mistakes. Here's some more of that disturbing stuff. There's a group out there called the Com. They go by other names. They have three primary factions. HackerCom primarily focuses on traditional cybercrime, ransomware, that kind of stuff. IRLCom, which stands for in real life, enables physical violence for hire. You do not make your ransom payment or you post something online that upsets somebody, they might send somebody to your house to physically harm you or kill you. Or they'll dox you, meaning they will very loudly and publicly post where you live and where your kids go to school. Or they might SWAT you, send the FBI to your house. Extortion com generally targets young adults by persuading them into sending an embarrassing photograph and they extort them. Teenagers have committed suicide over this, all right? We need to stop becoming victims so these groups go away. Artificial intelligence is becoming a scary thing. I think all of us have a little bit of a fear of it. We got these huge data centers being built all over. There's actually not enough of them. They're all sucking out a lot of energy and power. You know, the government's trying to figure out how we're going to power these things. The thing that scares me is the world is not united on AI governance. It's an arms race. So corporations and governments and adversarial nations are all racing to get the strongest AI. There's no real bumpers and rules around it. Agentic AI, that kind of AI that makes decisions on behalf of humans, is exponentially getting rolled out to all kind of places. I mean, I'm a little bit scared on what kind of things will be allowed to use agentic AI. Some of you maybe heard about Anthropic's little deal with the Department of War. The Department of War, Anthropic says, yes, you can use our product, but we want to have a couple of rules on it. One of them being that you're not going to use it on nuclear weapons. And the US government says, nope, we don't want any rules at all. So scary things, right? And it's not just the US. And cyber criminals are using this, and they're using agentic AI, and I know they're not going to use any safeguards. Later on in the presentation, I talk about an AI use policy, so we'll get to that later for your employees. All right, and we've already touched on moral issues. We do not want to fund criminals. And if that criminal is North Korea or Iran or some of these countries that are under intense sanctions, they're having a hard time financially, they're funding their missile systems with cybercrime money. We don't want to be a victim. If you pay a ransom, you're encouraging them to attack other people. I've got some stories. I'm going to talk about that in a minute. And the bad guys, of course, will promise to delete your data. Well, about a year and a half ago, a couple of years now, the FBI took over the servers of the world's largest ransomware group at the time called Lockbit. What did they find on those servers? All this victim data that was promised to be deleted was never deleted. We can't trust criminals, right? When you're compromised, you're exposing data that largely isn't yours. It's your staff's data. It's your client's data. You have an obligation to protect it. And when you're compromised, you expose the people in your business and personal circles. We've all had that email come out of the blue from someone you know, hey, click this funny link, whatever. And you probably got suspicious. That person got compromised, maybe didn't take security seriously enough, and they put you at risk. And there are people that go through these kind of things like identity theft that contemplate suicide. This is a serious thing. I wish it was making the news. It just doesn't make the news. All right, let's talk about ransomware a little bit. It used to be when ransomware first came out, they would encrypt your computer or computers. You get a ransom note, choose to pay or not. All right. Well, a lot of people chose not to pay. So the bad guys are trying to figure out ways to force a payment out of us. So let's say it happens to your organization. You get encrypted. You say, nope, we're not going to pay. Bad guy says, fine. Then we're going to take all that sensitive data we downloaded of your staff and clients, and we're going to post it for sale on the dark web and expose it unless you pay a ransom. Nope, we're not going to pay. Please don't. Good. Fine. Then we're going to launch 1 million bots on your network and bring your network to its knees so you can't function until you pay a ransom. Nope, we're not going to pay. Fine. Then we're going to send a note to all of your clients telling them that your business doesn't take security seriously. And oh, by the way, you client, pay us a ransom. All right. They will do anything to try to get the money. Here's some stories about that. I got two of them on this one slide. So about a year ago, Power School went through a ransomware event. They are one of the largest K through 12 school programs in North America. They went through an incident. Bad guys downloaded all the faculty and staff and student data for 18,000 schools. All right. Power School paid the ransom. Did the bad guy delete the data? Nope. He held the data. He decided, you know what? I'm going to go after all of those schools. So he sent a ransom note to the 18,000 schools saying, you pay me a ransom, or I'm going to publish all of your confidential data on the dark web for sale. All right. Now, this one made the news last week. Canvas is a product, the company is called Infrastructure. They went through the exact same thing. And I'm very angry at them right now because they paid the ransom. All right. So they went through the exact same thing. Bad guys went in, stole the data. No, we're not going to pay the ransom. Fine. Then we're going to send a ransom note to all 8,800 schools asking them to pay. Canvas caved. They paid the ransom. All right. Do we trust the bad guys are going to delete that data? I don't. No way. It's just, I don't trust it. By the way, the picture here, back to that Power School one, they eventually caught the perpetrator. It was a single person in their late teens, probably learned it from all that stuff in the dark web that the advanced people have been teaching. He got arrested. He is now in jail. By the way, little lesson learned here. If you folks ever go through an incident like this and you get a ransom note from the bad guy, pretend you don't exist, don't respond, just send that upstream to somebody in your org and let them deal with it. Okay, I've got a little video I'm going to share. So Doug is a CFO of a Midwest services company. They went through a ransomware incident about 2 years ago. We took over their network about 6 months after that. So he was kind enough to make a 60-second video of that experience. Here we go.
Hello, my name's Doug. I'm a CFO of a Midwest service company. Earlier this year, we had a ransomware event. Before it happened, we thought that since we're a small business, we weren't a target. We assumed those criminals only went after the big guys, and we thought our IT had it covered. We were wrong. The actual ransomware event and cleanup was a nightmare, much worse than we ever expected. Business interruption led to a financial hit. I can't tell you how many conference calls and team calls I was on for several months. Even after our users were back working, I wasn't. I'm still playing catch up. The organizational morale took a hit. We didn't even think about that aspect of it. After many discussions with many experts, my recommendation to you is not skimp on cybersecurity. Get engaged with a mature, secure, security-focused MSP. Make sure you have good secure backups and invest in cyber insurance to help mitigate the risk. Stay safe out there.
That was a really good message. Very kind of him to do that. Now, in both the webinars I do, I share that in both of them. I like the end users to see it because that started with an end user mistake. We're all human. The bad guys are smart. All right. But from a business decision maker standpoint, we thought we were too small. Nobody's too small. And what came after was just way worse than anybody imagined. I've tried to imagine this, and I've talked to peers and people that have been victims, and it's just hard to imagine going through that type of incident. It's been about 2 years. They're still dealing with lawyers on it, right? It's just, we obviously never want to go there. And what were some of the questions maybe they asked after that incident, or that you might ask if it happens to you? Why did we wait to prioritize spending on security? Because you didn't know better. You thought somebody else had it handled. He thought somebody else had it covered. He was wrong. Will our reputation be damaged? Probably. Are we going to be sued? Depends upon your industry. Will there be audit and fines? Again, depends upon your industry. Will I personally be held accountable? Maybe. Were you aware of some issues and didn't take action? Will the cost of this incident force us to raise prices? I saw this stat very recently. 30% of small businesses are forced to do so to stay alive, to keep their margins because of the immense cost of one of these things, or maybe lost clients. All right, here's kind of the point. The big theme of this presentation. Who is ultimately responsible for the existential event avoidance of your organization? Is it IT? It is not IT. All right. They own some of the blocking and tackling, but they don't own the outcome. It's executives, the CEO, the board, executive leadership. Those are the people that are ultimately responsible for cybersecurity and the outcomes of it. All right, now bear with me for this part. I added this part, the next few slides recently. I am not a CFO, but this is going to help me try to connect the dots on this a little bit and really drive this point home. Part of the problem, again, is leadership, let's just say the CEO, doesn't really know how to engage with IT as well as they do with finance. All right. So I follow a really strong financial thought leader called Copilot, and Copilot suggests some questions that the CEO should ask the CFO. And I'll get to the questions in a second. First off, when it comes to finance, CEOs know they own the outcome, but they know they don't actually run the process. They understand they're not doing the accounting, but they are accountable to the finances. They're used to asking questions, right? Some questions with finance, they're used to that, all right? Now compare that to IT a little bit. Now, first off, finance has been going back for decades and centuries, right? Best practices and so on. There's a lot of standards. Cybersecurity is kind of new, and it changes really quickly. And a lot of leadership just don't quite understand, don't understand that as good as finance, at least how to engage with it. CEOs assume finance is dangerous if mishandled, right? But they underestimate the cyber risk until it's personal, until it actually happens. Doug in that video, right? It was until it happened they realized, oh crap, I wish we would have taken this seriously sooner. All right. Cybersecurity is a business risk, not an IT task. Again, IT does the blocking and tackling, but at the board level, it needs to be taken more seriously. So here's a little bit of a better analogy, maybe. Cybersecurity is to IT and data what financial controls are to accounting. IT operates cybersecurity, but leadership owns the cyber risk just like you own financial risk. The CEO owns the outcome, or the executive leadership owns the outcome, depending upon how your business is set up. All right, here's some of the questions Copilot generated for me, because I'm not a CFO, that CEO should probably ask the CFO on a regular basis. Some of you might be CFOs. So maybe take this from your standpoint of, you know what, next time I meet with the CEO, I'm going to have some of this prepared ahead of time to have this good Q&A session. How is our financial position changing and why? What risk could materially impact our financial stability? And I added, major cyber incident is one of them. All right, companies that go through a major incident, cash flow could become a serious problem, depending upon what's going on. You better have good cyber insurance, and they better not deny your claim. We'll talk about that later. That's a big topic later. What controls ensure these numbers are accurate, CFO? What keeps you up at night financially, right? These questions assume the CFO has a process. They can explain them to you because you need to understand it, and they can provide evidence. Very important that they can provide evidence. All right, we're going to talk about that when we get to this IT slide of this. One more slide about the CFO. Some things the CEO should ask the CFO before signing financial statements. What could materially be wrong with this that could get us in trouble if I sign this? What controls prevent fraud or material error? What has changed since last quarter that increases our risk? If we were audited tomorrow, where would you be most concerned? All right, I love that question. It's kind of similar to how maybe we would ask a similar question to IT. Here's some questions CEOs should ask IT leadership. What event could materially harm our business? Again, think of this like those pre-sign-off questions. Where are we most exposed today? Show me. Give me some evidence. Show me. Help me understand this, because I don't understand it as well as finance. I don't want too technical. How do we prevent or detect that? If we had a serious incident tomorrow, what would I wish I had asked you today? Again, I just love that question. It moves ownership up to the top of the food chain. Again, IT doesn't own it. We just do the blocking and tackling. All right. Cybersecurity deserves the same critical questions as finance. Before an incident, not after. All right. Let's talk a little bit about how modern hacking works. All right. So the bad guys now are using what's called open source intelligence. They go to your website, social media posts, that's all public, things they find on the dark web. There's stuff on the dark web about all of us. And they use generative AI like Chat GPT and Gemini and Copilot and so on to help them figure out a better way to attack. Trying to get through firewalls is kind of hard unless it's misconfigured. It's pretty much all the spear phishing now, as we probably know. We have to assume at some point someone's going to make a mistake and a bad guy is going to get in. All those incidents you heard about on the news and all those thousands of incidents you didn't hear about, the bad guys were able to get into the system undetected past the antivirus, firewall, and multi-factor authentication. They laterally spread within 18 minutes and they do their thing and they get admin privileges and download sensitive data and then encrypt all the computers if that's their goal. It happens very fast. You need things in place to detect and neutralize these threats very early because they're so fast. That'll be later on in the presentation. We'll get to that. All right. Again, some of this content is also my user presentation. This is one of the things. Let's talk about password hygiene. This is a big problem. Back in 2021, PC Magazine did a survey. It's still relevant now. Things have barely changed. All right. The question was, do you use the same password for more than one service or site? About a quarter of the respondents said, yep, I use the same password for everything. Hopefully we all know now this is not a good idea. If your Pinterest account gets hacked, they're going to use that password to try to log into your banking, payroll, email, direct deposit, whatever. Yes, I use the same password for most things. So about half the users, pretty bad password hygiene. About another quarter, sometimes. About another quarter, no, I don't. Now, keep in mind their target audience is IT people. Probably they had better password hygiene or they were fibbing. If I walked down Main Street and randomly interviewed people and asked them this question, I'll bet 5% don't reuse passwords. It's a big problem. Here's another way that it's a problem. A lot of people share same passwords they use personally at work. All right, their personal password shows up on the dark web. They click a link on their work computer, bad guy's in, now he tries that password to get to other things, right? It's how little incidents turn into big incidents. How do we solve that? I don't get into it in this presentation, but I go deep into password manager, pass keys, things like that. Okay, here's what impacts you as business. This is happening way more than ransomware, all right? Business email compromise, a mailbox gets compromised. If your mailbox gets compromised, what bad things can happen? Bad guy can impersonate you to people that trust you and persuade them to do things financially related. Someone's going to lose money. The FBI says last year we lost over $3 billion to that. That's just a sliver. Most people don't report it. Per Coalition, a large cyber insurance carrier, about 60% of all cyber insurance claims last year were mailbox compromise and what comes after. A lot of things. I'm going to have a lot of content here about this. And the average claim was about $150,000. So a lot of money. All right. Here's a story about that. All right. This was a former client of ours in Eden Prairie. They were a consulting firm. They weren't very big. All right. They had multi-factor authentication on their email, the gold standard, right? All right. Well, the CEO fell for a phishing email. Please reset your Microsoft password. Click the link, went to this fake site, put in her email address and her password. Okay. Bad guy captured that. Then they got around their MFA. How did they do that? They stole her session token. What is that? You ever go to a website and after you do the MFA, it says click this checkbox to whitelist this browser or for 30 days or something, so you don't have to MFA every time. It saves a little file in the browser. Bad guy took her file, put it in their browser. Now their browser was whitelisted. They got around the MFA. Across our client base, we're dealing with that kind of incident almost daily. The bad guys are smart. This probably comes from some phishing kit. Any little script kiddie in their basement can probably do this. In this case, after they broke into the mailbox, they watched email for a while, noticed her email the bank. They interjected themselves into a conversation with the bank and eventually persuaded the bank into transferring almost $500,000 out. They didn't have cyber insurance. Even if they had cyber insurance is not going to cover that large of a claim for that type of an incident. I'll cover that later. I'll talk about that later. Why? For those of you that are in any way technical, the session token thing is to me is a bug with Microsoft's system. The only way to prevent it is you have to have your users subscribe to something called Entra ID P1. It's an additional cost to fix their problem, or business premium, and there's some enterprise level licensing that fixes that too. Okay, let's talk about a little twist on this email compromise. We see this a lot in our client base. and we support about 20,000 users. All right. One of your vendors gets compromised, and maybe you've seen this. Your people start getting email from this trusted mailbox, and in about 3/4 of the time when that happens, your users will engage back and forth. It's somebody you've dealt with before. What's going to come along here quickly? Blah, 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 blah. By the way, we just changed banks. Please send all future payments here. This is to the tune of billions of dollars. Way more money is being lost than ransomware. Here's a couple things that made the news last year. You probably didn't hear about it, but I did. Last year, City of Baltimore and the City of Portland both had some vendors compromised. All right. Bad guy starts emailing city employee from a legitimate mailbox and eventually persuades city employee to change banking information for future payments. The city of Baltimore was $1.5 million in before they realized they were paying a criminal. Probably because the legitimate vendor said, hey, we're not getting paid. Yeah, you are. No, we're not. City of Portland, $6 million. Multiple city finance team members signed off on these banking changes without verification. What was the mistake they made? What was the mistake this bank made right there? They didn't verify that request via some other method, usually calling a number you already have on file. Don't call the number in the email. You're probably talking to the bad guy. This has happened to multiple clients of us last year. Similar thing. Vendor's mailbox gets compromised. Interesting twist here. In 2 of those instances, the bad guy made a new internet domain, 1 character off from the vendor, interjected themselves into an existing conversation. I'm not going to notice 1 character off. No one's going to notice that. And hey, we're changing banks, blah, blah, blah. Our clients, 2 out of these 3 clients that I've documented here, lost over $100,000 before they realized they were paying a criminal. It's not their fault that their vendor got compromised, but it is their fault they didn't have proper processes in their finance department. All right? I'll have that in your homework assignment later. Interesting that the FTC puts out this cool infographic. I'm hoping to get one for 2025. But I want to focus on this little section over here on the demographic. 1/4 of all victims are the elderly, all right? But they're a huge percentage of the dollar losses. They're getting tricked. Maybe they're not very techy. Maybe they're not as sharp as they used to be. But a lot of them are considered to have money, retirements, and pensions, so they're big targets. Here's an example of what one of these situations might look like. Hello, Mr. Dram. This is Johnny from the U.S. Department of Finance. We were just made aware that where your money is currently located is no longer safe. You need to move your money here. And I'm going to give you instructions on how to withdraw that money from your retirement account, and you're going to deposit it in this crypto ATM, which is highly secure. That's what we recommend. And that's what's happening to the tune of billions. All right. So your homework assignment later is a little bit talk to your elderly loved ones about some of this content. I don't have all the content here I have in the user presentation, but I have enough of it here. Now look at this demographic. Almost half the victims are young adults. How is that? They're tech savvy, right? The problem is young adults tend to be very trusting of technology. It's going to protect them. They're wrong. Many of them have never been burned before. Well, I bet after they get burned, they'll have the guard up now. And a lot of them follow social media influencers. Invest in this, buy this, usually garbage. It ends up in go to a crypto ATM, transfer it there. All right. I come from a big family. My wife comes from a big family. I got lots of nieces, nephews, in-laws, whatever. About every year or two, I get a call from somebody. Hello, Uncle Peter. I'm just really embarrassed. I just fell for a scam and lost $10,000. Can you help me? I can't help you get your money back. I can teach you how to avoid that in the future. All right, take action. Here we go. First off, I tell everybody, don't be low-hanging fruit. What exactly does that mean? The hackers are stronger than Microsoft, Google, CrowdStrike. The Department of War is about as strong as it gets, and there are some hacking groups that are about at that level. They are very strong. It is impossible for us to defend ourselves against that kind of firepower. However, most of them run it like a business. If we can frustrate them, now I know the Titanic sank, but it's going to be harder to sink than the SS Minnow, all right? Frustrate them, delay them, don't let them do the lateral spread, kick them out of the network. They're losing money. They're going to go after low-hanging fruit because there are a million low-hanging fruit companies out there. Our job is to set up a cybersecurity program to at least frustrate them, if not more. All right, Here's going back to that cyber fraud that we were just going over, right? And again, this will be part of the homework. We'd all be sending it. When requested to change banking information for a customer, client, vendor, employee, you must verify via some existing way to make sure it's legit. Billions is being lost. Fund transfer. Maybe you're gonna pay a new vendor. You get somebody. Hey, I got a new vendor invoice or a little twist on any kind of change at all. You got to verify it. Don't just verify by responding to the email. Now, I mentioned gift cards here because that's been the biggest scam we've seen across our entire client base. All right. You hire a new employee. They post on LinkedIn, hey, I got this new job at blah, blah, blah. That's public information. Bad guys are scanning for that. All right. Within a day or two, a new employee gets a text message from the CEO. Welcome aboard. Hey, while you're here, I could really use your help. Do me a favor, go out and buy $1,000 of gift cards. When you get them, text me the codes on the back, and I can finish this thing I'm doing on. You text them the codes, you just gave the bad guy $1,000. They're smart. Way easier than ransomware. Now, our CFO helped me write this part. We have dual authorization at our bank. If we're going to make any changes like this, 2 of our people must sign off on it. Person A is probably working the deal. Hopefully person B asks person A, did you verify? How did you verify that this is legit before you actually let it happen? All right, let's talk about cyber insurance. Verify you have adequate cyber insurance. This is an example of what good looks like. I probably should have put an example of bad here. Maybe I'll do that next time. All right. This person has $1 million policy. If it's ransomware, some major event, it's probably an aggregate, like a total of $1 million within a year. All right. Now here's an important area down here, because most claims are in this area. This is really a $250,000 policy in effect. But I've seen policy where this area was 25,000 or 50,000. Again, considering the average claim for finance fraud is about 150, this numbers must be good. So this is a good policy. Dependent upon your industry and clientele, you should consider requiring your clients to carry cyber insurance. In other words, if something happens, they go through an incident and they can drag you in, sue you, or bring you in as a co-defendant or something, you want to make sure they have cyber insurance so that their cyber insurance will cover it and they will be less inclined to sue you. All right. You need to develop an AI policy. I do not have a sample policy here. I'll send it later though. But just to make you aware, a lot of you know this. Many generative AI tools like Chat, GPT, Gemini, and so on, they use your conversations to train the large language model. 90% of all chat users use free chat products. That's the drawback, is you're using your chats to train the model. Let everybody else do that. Let's protect our chat so that doesn't happen. If you're a Microsoft 365 shop, use the Copilot that comes with your 365, the business one, the free version. Protects your chats, doesn't train the large language model, keeps all of your chats within your 365 tenant. It's private and secure. It's great. If you use like the free Copilot, like at a personal level, the free Claude, there's an opt-out feature in the settings for it not to do that. Now, the people that invented this don't really know what's going to happen to these conversations. It's out there in hyperspace somewhere. We all encourage you, never input sensitive information, passwords, banking information, confidential information, right? Substitute it with something else when you're having a conversation. All right, now, there's something here called AI poisoning. I'll give you an example of that and how the bad guys are using AI against us. They know that a lot of people do like a search for what's Microsoft's support number or Adobe or whatever, name it, right? So they'll launch 1 million bots, and they got them, and they'll post online all over the place a fake Microsoft phone number. It's actually their phone number. All right. So you ask AI, what's Microsoft support phone number? It might present you with the bad guy's phone number. All right. So you have to verify that phone number by actually going to Microsoft's website. You call them. What's going to happen? Yep. I need your credit card number to take this call, blah, blah, blah. Right. Never give that poisoning scammer might ask you to repeat a code sent to your phone. I'll tell you a story about that in a minute. It's really an MFA code. Don't give it to them. Do not use generative AI to generate random passwords. It's not capable. Generative AI takes what it sees out there already. It's going to send you some regurgitated password. Don't do it. You have to use a password manager, password generator feature to do that. Use a business-provided Gen AI system like Copilot, or if you're in Google Workspace, use the Gemini that comes with that. That's going to be protected. Do not use the free ones if at all possible. I would use only US based. I would not use DeepSeek. That's China's. I have no idea what's going to happen with that. Do not deploy OpenClaw. It's actually a very powerful open source AI. The problem is there's no way to put boundaries around it. If one of your employees deploys OpenClaw, ties into everything, you can't secure what it's going to do with that. And if you're in a regulated industry, that becomes really critical. All right, I encourage you to deploy passkeys. Again, I'm kind of giving you a little bit of your homework here. What are passkeys exactly? Some of us kind of know, but I'm going to get really specific. Passkeys are passwordless authentication. Password authentication is one of the biggest problems. How little breaches turn into big breaches and so on. When you use a passkey, it becomes basically phish resistant. Let's say I set up a passkey to my Amazon account. Okay, my passkey is a thumbprint on my computer. All right. That passkey is tied to this computer. I cannot log into Amazon from any other device other than this computer or my other two devices that I've synchronized it to. So if you fall for social engineering and somehow the bad guy kind of gets to your account and he says, now I want you to hit your thumbprint, maybe he's pretending to be support, right? Now hit your thumbprint so I can get in and help you. Even if you hit your thumbprint, they can't log in because they don't have your computer. Passkeys are amazing. All right. Now there's some challenges why you don't switch now. It takes you to be a little techie, but you got to practice it, right? I know you've also been to some sites, try a passkey, start doing it. Make sure you have a biometric or something to have it attached to, and you're going to want to synchronize it somehow, maybe via your password managers oftentimes have that feature. That's how I do it. I also wrote an article. I wrote a quarterly newsletter. Here's a link to my article, Q1, about passkeys. Best practices. I encourage you to read that. If everybody used passkeys everywhere, it's billions of dollars saved. It'd make it really hard for the bad guys. All right. Let me tell you about a couple of incidents. All right. Remember I talked about that 18-minute thing? Things happen really fast. So we were onboarding a new client this is probably 5 years ago now. All right. One of the frontline users made a mistake, clicked a phishing link. The bad guy deployed a keylogger on the network, meaning they deployed a piece of software that captured the keystrokes on every single computer and all the servers. And all those computers were infected for 4 to 6 months. We only discovered it because users were complaining to us about these weird pop-ups. There was a glitch in this virus. This was a manufacturer, okay? All the user keystrokes were sent to China for 6 months before we shut it down. Why didn't they do ransomware? Because China didn't want ransomware. They wanted the intellectual property of this manufacturer. I tell our manufacturing clients, or anybody I talk to that's in manufacturing, if you're manufacturing, China's probably already been in, stolen the intellectual property, and they're building it for pennies on the dollar in China, and we're getting nothing. The FBI estimates that the US loses $200 to $600 billion a year just to that. Talk about trade deficit, just because our intellectual property is being stolen. All right, here's now a good news, similar story. All right, client of ours in Woodbury, frontline user makes a mistake, bad things start happening. We have something on our client's computers called Huntress. I mentioned them because they were very kind of us at the part of this presentation. Bad things started happening. The computer got isolated. Okay, so it couldn't spread across the network. Then IT people can take action. 10 days later, the FBI called our client and said, hey, 10 days ago, we noticed one of your computers calling this mothership we're monitoring. Usually by now, all the computers are encrypted. Is everything okay? Yeah, everything's fine. We took care of it 10 days ago. Thanks for letting us know. So we know the FBI is watching. They may not help you, but they're trying to watch. They're probably trying to capture more the big picture of what was going on. All right, so I'm asking you to upgrade your detection neutralization. There are products out there that do this. Huntress is one of them. CrowdStrike has a flavor of CrowdStrike, not everyone. Sophos and so on. There's other products that do this. You have to make sure you're on the version of it that automatically neutralizes. Because bad things happen 24/7. Most things happen like at 2 in the morning. All right. Now, interesting stat. For orgs that mostly insource their security, all right, the average time from detection to neutralization is 16 hours. Way too slow. You need to deploy something that is more like this, 6 minutes. You log in from Russia on your computer or your 365, it locks out your account. You click a link on your computer and bad things start happening, it isolates your computer. Every company needs this. This is what the cyber insurance carriers are asking for. It's critical. It's like one of the most basic things we all need. All right. I encourage you to update your email security. A lot of you have, your email goes into, say, Microsoft, goes through Microsoft spam filter in your inbox. We've been seeing a lot more bad stuff come through. Same on the Google side. I encourage you to get a second layer. There's lots of companies out there that do this. All right. That second layer will probably block all that. Click this DocuSign link. A lot of them come with like these banners, which are really cool. It warns the user of bad things that are going to happen. Maybe it lets them manage their spam right there. Remember that story I told you of a couple of our clients that the bad guy made a new internet domain, one character off, and then interjected themselves? Those would have come in red. For our clients, we hadn't rolled this out yet for them. And so they didn't get the red banner. Probably would have stopped them from losing some money. All right, a little bit about security awareness training. There's been some debate in the security community that online stuff you get maybe every month or whatever that your users get isn't effective enough. Well, there was a big study done last year. What they found was for companies that do that kind of training, when they hire a new employee, the new employee is, I don't know, almost 50% more likely to fail a phishing exercise, which means existing employees are less likely. It's effective. It's one of many layers of security, and you need many layers. All right. Cyber insurance carriers are starting to ask about this now. What percentage of your users are compliant with their monthly training? All right. I had to ask one of them, what's a good number? They said 75%. Fine, 75%. A big number of users must be doing their training. So if you have trouble, if you have a system like this and you're having trouble getting compliance, tell them it's a cyber insurance issue now, and that you need to have high compliance so that you can keep your premiums down. Blame the cyber insurance carrier. All right, now more questions, IT leadership, to make sure they have it covered. Again, don't assume they have it covered. Trust but verify, right? You trust your IT people, your IT director, your managed service provider, what it is, but you gotta verify so that you don't become a big victim. Where are we most at risk? Show me the results from our last security risk assessment. Maybe your IT people don't even know what that is. Tell me how our backup system's immutable. In other words, the bad guys can't delete it because they'll try. How do we neutralize critical alerts 24/7? Remember I said that 18-minute window, like it's got to neutralize really fast. How do we protect user identity? Similar. Show me. Give me evidence. Just like you would ask your CFO for evidence, get evidence from your IT people. What's our strategy to protect against AI? What are our cyber insurance gaps? And I got another slide here. It's going to help you with that. How fast can we mitigate the effects of a serious attack and get back to normal operations? That's a really big question. Kind of hard to answer, right? So that's one that they're going to have to probably do a little homework and come back, but they should come back with, here's our mitigation plan. Your incident response plan, right? That's only part of it. All right, now, in the agenda, I talked about improving business valuation. So we have a client with a strong, or maybe just improving anything. We have a client with a strong security posture. One of their competitors had a breach. Our client was able to pick up a lot of their clients due to it, right? Strong security posture won over weak security posture. That Eden Prairie manufacturer I mentioned, that all that stuff was sent to China, they eventually were acquired by private equity. At that point, they had a very strong security posture, and they are in good shape. And whenever I meet with their private equity company, I'm going to meet with them once in a while, they always compliment the security posture of this particular org. All right, here's a little bit negative. We have a Minneapolis client that was trying to obtain a large enterprise client. They were trying to obtain Target. All right, Target will audit you to check your security. They failed it. All right, so we upped their security posture, and then they were able to obtain another large enterprise client later by being able to prove that. It's great. All right, we're to homework. Thank goodness. All right, again, I'm going to send this later. This is primarily for finance team people. I do want to say, for you as a home, personal person, these kind of things can happen to you too. Somebody can pretend to be your internet provider, your municipality, your water, whatever. You get fake bills, fake things. Please send payments here. Make sure you verify via some other method. All right, I'm providing this to everybody. Now, a lot of this here, this is all in that user-facing presentation. So some of this will be a little out of context for you, but the stuff in red is very relevant to stuff we talked about. Talking about that finance fraud stuff. I'm going to send this. I encourage you to review this thoroughly, tape it to the refrigerator. Hold frequent security and privacy discussions with your young people and elderly loved ones because they're the ones on a personal level that are losing the most money. All right. Adequate cyber insurance. Here's the questions that you're going to ask your cyber insurance agent. Which claims are most common for companies like ours? All right, that's important that we align insurance with those type of claims. A lot of times your insurance agent, they're smart on these on E&O insurance. They're not as sharp on cyber. Cyber is a little bit newer. So you got to lead them to it potentially. I have a lot of experience with this. What are our sublimits? Again, I talked about like finance fraud sublimits. They better be more than 25,000. Which ones matter most? Which security controls are required to keep our coverage valid? You must maintain MFA on all your systems throughout the period. Well, let's say you have a gap in that. They might deny your claim. Getting a claim denied is terrible. Why pay for insurance if you're going to have a claim denied? Which kind of losses are explicitly excluded? It might say something, well, if the attack came from North Korea, we're not going to cover that, right? So you want to be aware of that. What are we required to do during an incident? You're probably required to report something very quickly. I have a lot of experience with incident response. You're going to talk to that cyber insurance carrier hour one. You might just tell them, notice of circumstance. You're not making a claim yet. Just giving them a heads up. We're investigating still, or maybe you know it's a claim at that point. And there's notification rules that might come later if you're in a regulated industry. How does this policy coordinate with our other insurance? You might have, again, E&O, GPL, whatever, you have EPL, these other things. They don't necessarily overlap. You definitely need cyber as a standalone policy. All right. Here we go. So, all right, last bit of your homework is I'm encouraging any of one of you to reach out to me if you want. I provide free assessments for about a 45-minute meeting. I would want you to have your cyber insurance and AI policies handy. I do these free cyber risk assessments all the time. It's painless and I don't mind. It's my way to help protect the small business community, their staff, and their clients. Anybody that engages with me that goes to this meeting, we'll give you a $300 gift card, or we can donate $300 to your favorite charity. I'm also going to go a lot deeper into this discussion about how to engage with IT leadership. I kind of scratched the surface here. We're going to want to go deeper into what are the questions you ask? What are the follow-up questions you ask? How do you obtain evidence? How do you make this a recurring process? Because it's not like a one and done thing. And then we can also talk about, I can do a no-charge cybersecurity training webinar for your users. I love doing that. That's the one I probably do 2 to 3 times a week. Very impactful. You saw in the beginning, I had some of that same stuff. I'm going to scare them, hopefully, into not making bad decisions. Also, you can sign up for my quarterly newsletter here. All right, some parting thoughts. At some point, all of you learned how to manage money, right? It's a basic skill for all of us. In 2026, the new basic skill is cyber threat and privacy protection. As a leader, you don't need to know techie, but you do need to how to engage with IT leadership as well as you do with finance. This presentation slide will be provided. Please review and share this checklist with your loved ones, especially those that are vulnerable or inexperienced. Please do your homework. Send questions, and we are done. So, Nick, do we have any questions?
None in the chat at the moment. I think that was just a lot of really impressive information to soak in. I am very sad MFA is not the gold standard that it's been sold as. I really thought that was
the bad guys are just
untouchable.
Yeah. And again, if you have questions later, feel free to reach out to Nick and then he can forward them to me. I'm happy to field some questions. So.
And do sign up for that quarterly newsletter. I get that every quarter, and it has some very, very interesting information and sometimes quick little videos too.
That's right.
Well, and you landed that ship incredibly well at 12:59, Peter. I'm very impressed. So thank you for doing that. Yeah, just getting some thank yous in the comments, and Peter will be sending out some of this information. And again, this will be on our website in a few days. Thank you all so much for attending.
Thank you. Bye now.
Bye, everybody.